So you can stand towards the front or the back of your mat, but separate your feet out to hips width distance. Soften in your knees. And try to, at first, just notice where you are in space. So take a breath. And use the next few breaths to observe your mind. Observe your belly. Observe your knees. The belly as our center tends to drift a little forward or drift a little back, and that can shift or shape where your weight lands in your feet, as can whether or not your knees are locked out. So here, soften in your knees ever so slightly. Take a breath in and a breath out. We'll be here for 5 breaths, getting really quiet and receptive in the feeling in the feet, but also in the receptivity that translates to up your legs. So as you soften in your knees, you can notice the weight spreading across your feet, but you might notice that maybe your hip tries to shift. Whatever it is, start to observe what's going on. Breathe. And notice. If you notice that your weight is shifting towards your toes, notice how that feels both in the physical body but also in the emotional body. This has a twinge of anxiety with it when you're on your toes. And if you shift your weight too far back towards your heels, you might observe that you feel unsteady in the other direction. You're welcome to stay still and continue this conscious awareness between the legs and the whole of your body. When you feel ready, you can start to shift your weight from side to side between your feet. Noticing as you shift, the moment when the weight really transfers from one foot to the other. Notice if there's a tendency to sort of drift your hips over, or if your knee is locking, you might feel that radiate up through your low back even. Let your breath come in and your breath go out. And of course, this rocking motion can become a walking motion when you feel inclined or ready. Noticing the transfer of weight, the lightness of one foot, and perhaps also the stabilizing of the standing leg. Especially if you mentioned hip flexor stuff or even foot stuff. Notice how the movement of transferring your weight and moving forward and back on your mat shifts in some of these internal places, the hips, the thighs. And you can move forward and back along the line of your mat. Since you're at your home, you might just take a lap around the room that you're in. If you're staying on your mat, we'll be moving forwards and backwards a few times, so there's no rush and you do have time to explore. Your breath can line up with your movement, but it doesn't have to. Let your breath find a steady pattern. And stay with the steady rhythm of your breath. We'll take one more round forward and backward, or let's say a lap around. But as you're moving, let yourself pause, and any part of the movement that feels like it's creating space or feels tight or interesting. So you can take a sort of rocking step forward and backwards and even explore shifting your weight differently if there's a spot that feels tight or gives you the indication that you might need another moment in. Be willing to explore, maybe even circling up the pelvis if there's a spot that feels like it needs exploration. Let your breath come in and the breath go out. As you're making your way back or forward one last time, place a block on your mat. We'll use that in just a moment. So when you're back to center, back to the beginning, I'll just turn towards you for this part. Take a moment to go back to this gentle shifting or swaying from side to side. And if there's a part of your body that you're noticing, specifically hip flexors were mentioned, so they're coming to mind for me. You can linger in a spot that feels good. But we're going to use a little bit of elevation to explore that same spot. So you'll put one foot on the block and leave the other foot down. And we'll shift weight between these two places, which might help you bring some awareness into the quad of the leg that's on the block. And turn sideways. So you have some opportunities and options here. You can simply focus on pressing down to get tall and coming back down. This is a good way to build strength. You can also come on to the top of the back foot as you bring yourself up onto the block. So you get a little bit more of a frontline stretch on the lower leg, and then come back down. You're welcome to use this to explore standing balance. If that's something you're working on in your practice, you can lift up the leg, use the bend of the knee to slowly lower the foot down. These are all different variations of exploring that just simply comes from taking a step and seeing what your body is interested in. You can also move to step forward so that when you're stepping up on the block, your weight is shifting backwards, which you might notice does something different for your body. When you feel complete with the first side, return to neutral again with both feet on the floor, and you can take a bend and a gentle bounce as a reset, like a shaking meditation moment, or you're welcome to come back to swaying if that feels like a better way to reset for your body. But take a breath in. And a breath out. When you feel complete with either the shaking or the rocking, you'll shift yourself over to your second side. So you can let the weight drift to the lower leg, or the leg that will become the lower leg. Shift your weight onto the block. And again, you can focus on letting the weight come into your standing leg. And if there's knee trouble, really emphasize tracking the standing knee in the same direction as your second toe. That's a good way to keep the knee safe. If there's hip flexor stuff going on, you can play with coming towards the top of the back foot to help get a little bit of space. I'm just running through these options again so you have them available. Quick recall. You can also shift the lower leg forward of the block so as to play with coming to stand. And you might notice if there's something going on in your hip flexors, or if there's something happening, it might feel more challenging to step backwards up. And you can notice that and maybe work with it. So we'll take about 5 or 6 more breaths. Breathing. Being. Give yourself permission to explore in the way that is most interesting or supportive for your body. And I know there was a reference to foot stuff. You might notice that with the shifting of the weight up and down, your feet are doing something, especially if balance is feeling challenging. That is okay. When you're complete again, you'll step off the block. You can shift it out of the way for now. Separate your feet out to hips width distance, and we will take a shake in the middle. So let your feet really ground comfortably down, bend in your knees. And the bouncing, if this is newer for you, you're not lifting up your heels. That's a lot of work. You're bouncing from your quads and your legs. But ideally, everything else moves. Everything from the shoulders to the baby in your belly to your knees. The knees bending helps to move. If you notice there's a place that you're clenching, and try to soften that. Hopefully this bouncing will warm you up on this colder day. Get our blood moving. Take a breath in and a breath out. Okay. If you're stepped towards the front of your mat, step yourself towards the back. Take a breath in. And on your exhale, slow your bounce and find a standing posture, a mountain pose. If it's supportive of your knees to keep a soft bend, you can, but try to observe the weight shifting generally back towards the back of the arch. Breathe in and breathe out. Okay. Inhale, your arms go up and overhead. And with your exhale, bend in your knees, fold through center. You can bring your elbows onto your thighs, or you can fold all the way down with your hands to the floor. Take a halfway lift as you inhale, hips go back, chest goes forward. And with your exhale, fold in a way that lets your head hang a little heavier. On your inhale, put your hands on your thighs, lengthen your spine. With your exhale, we're going to cat roll up. So round your way through your spine and roll your way up to stand. Inhale your arms up overhead. Exhale, hands to center. Okay. Turn your left toes out a smidge so that they're pointing more towards the top left corner of your mat. You'll step your right foot forward. And you can make this a short warrior one or as long as is comfortable. Feet can be hips width distance or a little wider if your body needs. Right knee over right heel. And again, because there was a good talk about hip flexor stuff, here in Warrior One, with the bottom leg, with the lower half, you can shift your hips a bit from side to side and explore that moment when you feel this sort of zip down the back leg. So pressing back through the back heel, feeling into the hip flexors. And if it's too much on the back knee, I find shortening the stance helpful. You can still explore in the hip flexors, but it doesn't feel as impactful in the back leg. Again, you can keep your hands towards your hips, or if it feels good, sweep them up. Breathe in. And breathe out. We'll take 3 breaths. Then 2. One more inhale. And with your exhale, straighten your front leg. Bring your hands to your hips. And then pivot to the left. Toes turn in, heels turn out. We're setting up for a wide-legged forward fold. If you need to turn to face the computer, that's okay. Soften in your knees, shift your hips back, and then to the best of your ability, keep the bend of your knees so that when you fold, you're keeping a long spine, but it's supported from your legs. If you need blocks handy, you can reach for them. But you'll fold, then lengthen your chest forward and your hips back. 2 options here. You can explore the hamstrings by folding and dropping your head. Maybe your hands walk between the legs. You can explore your hips by shifting from side to side or letting the hips sort of roll in a circle. Making a choice that serves your body right now. And sometimes we think with our minds that a certain thing will help the body and then it doesn't, and we keep trying. So I'll encourage you today to think with your body. And that might mean taking a breath and really trying not to let the mind dictate where you go. Closing the eyes maybe helps to feel your way through a thing rather than dictate how the posture will move. Okay. When you feel complete, walk your hands forward to lengthen out your back, hips back, chest forward. With your exhale, we'll bend in the right knee. Shift your hips over to the right and turn your left toes up. So this is Skandasana lunge, but we're going to sit here. So you can keep the right knee lifted. Yep. Let the left leg extend. Now, if sitting here is forcing a round to come into your back, take a moment to adjust and get props. You can sit on a blanket or a towel. If you're prone to locking out your extended knee, put something under it, like a towel or a blanket again. I'm a big fan of blankets, as many of you know. We'll take the side body stretch just because it's nice, but then we'll do some more hamstring love to get a little more space. So from here, put your left hand on your right shin. Reach your right arm up. Take a breath in. And you'll lean your right arm overhead. It doesn't matter how far you go, and the support of your left hand on your right leg helps to create a little resistance that might give you more space along your right sideline. Breathe in and breathe out. 2 more breaths. One more inhale. And an exhale. Pull yourself up to seated. Pause. You'll bring the right foot across in front and glide or gently place your left knee into the arch of the right foot. So we're setting up a sort of pinwheel shape. Yep. A couple of options here. You can slide your right hand behind your right hip, press down and lift up. This can feel like a nice way to get some space along the inner left leg. You can stay for a few breaths or alternate between up and down, such that the inhale lifts you up and the exhale brings you down. For some, it's actually really nice to take this as more of a passive shape. So you can take the active variation if that works for you, or grab your bolster, make a ramp, and let yourself gently lean back over the ramp for a few breaths. So either the active variation or the passive variation is fair game. It's interesting to notice what you feel drawn to or what your body wants. Some days I get myself into the passive shape thinking that's the best thing for me, but the active one feels better. So give yourself permission to explore each option and then change your mind. Have about 8 breaths to explore between these few places, so take your time. If you are lifted up in that pinwheel variation, set your hips back down. If you're leaning back against a bolster, when you're ready to come up, use your hands to shift up first. You'll take your left hand to help you. You can also lean away to take weight out of the left knee. You'll set your left foot down. Ooh. And then extend the left leg back out. So we'll return to the same position that we came to the floor in, with the left leg extended and the sole of the right foot down. If it feels helpful to drop the knee, you can drop the knee out to the side, but this time we'll turn towards the left leg and fold. Now, as you're folding towards your left leg, if you feel sort of caught in your left hip crease, especially if you mentioned a hip flexor thing, to create a little space, you can take a blanket or a towel and just fold it into your hip crease to help create a gap. Similarly, if you notice you're locking out your knee, you can tuck the tail of that blanket underneath your left knee, but we'll fold. Let your breath come in and your breath go out. One more inhale. And with your exhale, sit yourself up. If you have a bunch of props around, we'll just slide them out of the way for now. Unless you like to have something under your knees for table, because that's where we're headed next. You can put a blanket underneath where your knees will go. Help guide your knees up and over onto your mat. Coming onto hands and knees, or fists and knees, or forearms on blocks and knees, whatever your body needs today. We'll take a cat-cow. Let your breath come in as you arch your belly down, and let your breath go out as you round your spine. Breath in. Breath out. Take a few cycles of breath, feeling your cat-cow and noticing if there's a place that needs extra support. Let's see how you can integrate to provide that support. When you feel complete and it's time to move or shift, you can do so from table, or you can transition to downward dog. You get to pick. If you're coming towards down dog, walk your hands a few inches forward of the line of your shoulders, curl your toes under, lift your hips. If you'd prefer to move from table, you stay low, take a breath in. With your exhale, toes are curled under, you walk your hands back towards your feet in either position, and you end up in a forward fold at the back of your mat. Halfway lift with your in-breath. Exhale, fold, but bring your elbows to your thighs as you fold. Inhale, hands to thighs, lengthen your spine. As you exhale, round your way up to stand, just like a cat. Take your arms up for your inhale, reaching overhead. Exhale, hands to center. Now that you're standing again, observe the distinctions and differences between your sides. You can let your hands come down by your side. Breathe in. And breathe out. In through the nose. And out. We'll set up the second side now. So turn your right toes out into the top right corner of your mat. You'll step your left foot forward, and again, It might be a really short warrior one stance. It doesn't need to be the longest warrior of all time. Anchor through your back foot and use that activation as a vehicle, as a means to explore your pelvis and where you really anchor, when you anchor, what you feel along the front line of your back leg, which is your right leg. Let your breath come in and your breath go out.
Why is that a picture? Is that a picture of you?
It is a picture of me, buddy, because I'm teaching. Do you want to wave hi?
You go back, buddy. Come here.
Take a breath in. Now you can stay here with your hands on your hips and keep circling, or you can reach your arms up for the last 2 or 3 breaths here. Take a breath in and a breath out. Breath in and breath out. One more time. And as you exhale, let your left leg or your front leg come towards straight. Turn your toes to the right. Toes turn in, heels turn out. And last time we circled the hips low when we had already folded. This time you can circle high. Let your hips move around. If there's a spot that feels interesting, compelling, stay in it as long as you like, or turn. Change directions if you haven't already. And when you feel done, you'll find center. If you've got some tightness in your shoulders, you can interlace your hands or grab a strap. Shrug your shoulders back, lift your chest up, take a breath in. And with your exhale, bend in your knees, fold down. Now it might work for you to fold and stay. If that doesn't feel good for one reason or another, you let your hands come down. And you can, to still get a little bit of love through the shoulders, take a couple of shoulder rolls, pressing your hands into whatever they're touching to help create some resistance. So, either variation. Let your breath come in and your breath go out. Okay. When your shoulders feel done, release your hands to the floor if they're not already there. Lengthen your chest forward, your hips back, breathe in. And this time, as you exhale, bend in your left knee. Shift your hips over to the left, turn your right toes up, and use your hands to support you in coming down as gracefully as possible, even if it doesn't feel graceful. Now, the same propping options are available to you. So if you're sitting and you're noticing that you're rounding back, put something underneath your hips. Similarly, if you notice that your right leg, your extended leg is locking, you can put a blanket or something underneath it. Anchor really firmly through your left foot and use the support of your left leg to help you sit up a little taller. Take a breath in and a breath out. You'll take your right hand, move it over to your right shin or somewhere along your left leg. On an inhale, reach the left arm up, breathe in. And you'll reach the left arm overhead to the right towards the right foot. It's not going to get there, but the action of leaning is what we're looking for. Take a breath in. And a breath out. One more inhale. And with an exhale, bring yourself up first. You can guide your left knee down. Then bring your right knee into the arch of the left foot. Let's turn to give some space here. Yeah. Okay, so we started with the option of pinwheels, or this rooting down through the left hand, press down to lift up through the hips. And that's a good option. You can take a couple of these lifting and lowerings. It's a good way to build back strength, but also some frontline opening. You can also stay lifted as long as that feels good. So maybe you take each lift with a 3 count, 3 breaths. The other option here was to take this as more of a restorative or restful shape. So you can build a ramp behind you. Now, you want the small of your back to come towards the edge of the bolster, and you'll lean back. And it might be that what you needed on one side is different than what you need on this side, or the second side. So just breathe and let your mind go. The mind is always saying, balance it out, balance it out. Instead, see what feels right as a way of balancing it out. Let the body tell you what is needed for balance. And that might mean more activation. That might mean more support. The only wrong answer is the one that's forced. And take about 3 more breaths wherever you are, whether that's active or passive. When it's time to come up, if you're lifted in the active shape, bring your hips down first. If you're in the passive shape, you can sort of lean more towards your left hand to help you sit up. Use your right hand to help extend your right leg. You might lean weight into your left hand to help reposition. Remove this blanket. Now, you can extend through the right leg and either bring the sole of the left foot back to the floor, or if it feels better to let the left knee drop to the side, that's perfectly fine. Try to let the hips be relatively level though, whichever way you decide to go. But this time we'll be folding over the extended leg. So turn towards your right leg and let yourself fold down. Now, if you feel like you have some compression in your hip crease, we can bring back this fold up towel or blanket as some extra support. Just hug it in. Let your breath come in. Let your breath go out. Okay. When you feel complete, you'll sit yourself up. If you don't already have a ramp created, this time we'll create one all together. So you can use your hands to help guide your knees up and take a gentle knee rock from side to side. We'll set up Stairway to Heaven. I'm gonna shift mine to the other side of the mat just so that you can see it a little better. The darkness is a little challenging. So I have a very thick bolster and only need one block underneath it. If you have a softer bolster or you're using a series of pillows, you want to have some support under your head, and possibly if the bolster's not firm enough to keep support, you want to put something underneath your chest as well so that your head and your chest both feel supported. Then you'll bring the small of your back up against the edge of the bolster. Now, you have some options for your legs. Some folks like to keep the soles of the feet on the ground. Others like to come into butterfly shape. So you can bring your feet together, let your knees drop out to the side. Once you lower, you might observe that your elbows don't touch the floor. This is a good reason to grab a blanket or towel. And we'll stay here for a few moments to really come into the experience of rest. If it feels better to extend your legs, and by better I simply mean more restful at this point, you can extend, you can add more support. oftentimes in restorative shapes, you drop to this space in between waking or active cognition, active thinking, and dreaming or more passive brainwaves. And sometimes the outside world has a way of making itself known. You can stay here in this passive shape as long as you like. In fact, you might choose to take Stairway to Heaven as your Shavasana today, and that's perfect. If you feel done or awakened by the birds, you can press down into your arms to help you lift yourself up. Pause for a moment to get your bearings. If you need a seated cat-cow, that can be a nice way to reconnect or come back. We'll set up Shavasana, and there's a lot of things that can be done to set up Shavasana. We're not going directly there, but the setup might be useful preemptively. You can put your bolster down by your legs and set a blanket up towards your head. And then, when it's time to come onto your back, if you mentioned low back discomfort, take a moment to actually come onto your back slowly so you can roll to your side and make your way down. With the bolster there, you can rest your feet on it or over it, depending on the length or width of your bolster. We'll take a really gentle figure 4 before we come into Shavasana. So crossing the left ankle over your right thigh. If you've chosen to stay in Stairway to Heaven, you can do this shape there as well. The right foot's, one foot is down, one foot is crossed over the opposite thigh. It doesn't matter which. You can be perfectly still or find a gentle rocking action. Let your breath come in and your breath go out. If there's a place that feels good to linger, know that you can. When you feel complete with this side, you'll simply switch. Nothing extra today, no pomp and circumstance, just one side to the other. When this side feels complete, bring both feet to the floor. You can set the bolster underneath your thighs, or just extend your legs out for a final resting pose. So your legs go out Your arms go out to a place that's comfortable, and your body gets soft. Now, if there's a reason to not be flat on your back today, you're welcome to either roll to your side and stay there for Shavasana, or to come to an easy seat and take meditation instead. Totally up to you. But for these next few moments, find a place positionally and internally that allows your mind to be easeful and without doing. So take a breath in and a breath out. In through the nose and then back out. If you'd prefer to stay in Shavasana a little longer and you have the time today, you're always welcome to do that. When it's time where you feel done, you'll bring one foot at a time to the floor and roll to your side if you're not already there. And pause to observe the change. Then use your hands to come to a comfortable seat when you're ready. Bring your hands somewhere on your body that needed a little extra love today. Maybe that's knees, maybe that's belly, whatever it is. Breathe in. And exhale through your mouth. And set your mind to whatever it was that got you to your mat this morning or today. And mentally acknowledge yourself for making this space for healing, for awareness, for yourself. Bring one hand up to the center of your chest, and the other hand up to the center of your forehead. Sit up as tall as you can so you feel the fullness of your spine. Breathe in and breathe out. From the deeper space in you that sets intentions and follows through on them, let's bow and honor that same space in the folks that we've shared practice with today. May all beings be peaceful. Thank you all so much for sharing practice.